Hello students, Vande Matram. Today we are going to learn about hardly when or scarcely when. Okay, so how to use hardly when and scarcely when to conjunct the sentences. Okay, you can also use before in the place of when, at the place of when. Okay, so the Hindi meaning of hardly or scarcely is same, muskil se. Okay, we have to use hardly in common language, in spoken language, but we have to use scarcely in formal language. So the meaning of hardly or scarcely is same. So it depends on the sentence. Which type of sentence is that? Okay, so let's start. First, see the structure. Okay, hardly, scarcely, plus had, plus subject, plus third form of verb, plus when, plus you have to also use before that at the place of when, plus subject, plus verb second form and other words. Now the second structure of using hardly, scarcely or barely. Subject plus had plus hardly. Remember, when you use hardly second and put the subject first, you have to use had with subject. Okay, then before or when plus subject plus second form of verb and other words. Okay, so here we can see this sentences divided in two parts, before then and after then. Okay, so he reached the station, the train arrived. Now we use hardly and conjunct these two sentences. Okay, so let's start. Hardly had he reached the station when the train arrived. The Hindi meaning is written there. मुश्किल से वह स्टेशन पहुंचा ही था कि रेलगाड़ी आ गई. Okay, now next sentence or the next now we use second structure to conjunct this sentence. He had hardly reached the station when the train arrived. Okay, so this is the second structure of using hardly had. So here we put structure first and write had hardly. Okay, and conjunct with when or before. You can also write here before. Now next sentence. Hardly had he reached the school when it began to rain. Okay, so the Hindi meaning of this sentence, वह मुश्किल से स्कूल पहुंचा ही था कि बारिश शुरू हो गई. थर्ड, hardly had I thought when you began to speak. Okay, मैंने मुश्किल से कुछ सोचा ही था कि तुमने बोलना शुरू कर दिया. Okay, so you can also use at the place of hardly had, scarcely had. Okay, but remember you have to use scarcely for formal language and hardly for common language. So the third example, next example, hardly had he sat down when a beggar arrived. Next, hardly had he completed his work when I came. So this is the use of hardly and scarcely and barely. So the meaning of hardly, scarcely and barely is same, but remember there is two types of structure for using hardly or scarcely. Okay, first structure where you put hardly at first, and second structure we have to put subject first and use had hardly after that. Okay, so this is very simple, using hardly when or scarcely when or barely when to conjunct the sentence. Okay, so thank you.